Greetings, fellow humans. I'm MartianBuu, and today I have for you a March of the Lich King wild deck for every class. If you wanted a Death Knight deck, I actually did that in my previous video. You can find a link to that right up there somewhere. I had 5 of those decks to choose from, so if you want a Death Knight, go ahead and click that and check that out. But if you're interested in everything else, I'll be covering that in this video. So, with no further ado, first up, we have Lifesteal Demon Hunter. I actually wanted to do a cool Renathal Scythe deck where I scythed out the Renathal and got all of the bonus of the 10 extra health without any of the downside of drawing Renathal. But it's actually bugged right now, so if you do that, you get the 10 extra cards, but you don't get the 10 extra health. It's weird, so that's why I didn't build that deck, and it's also why there's no Renathal in my list here. What Demon Hunter did get that was really cool from this expansion, other than that, is Unleash Fel. Unleash Fel deals damage to all enemies, and with Monothirst 4, it gets Lifesteal. So if your opponent has a board, it's actually a really powerful tool for Lifesteal Demon Hunter. It's redundant with Felscream Blast, so you actually get 2 good wide lifesteal effects, and situationally this one's better. It's also situationally worse because you can't hit your own minions with it, but it does hit more minions and it does go face. So really powerful extra tool, nice to have that redundancy. I do still have the Scythe in here. The benefit of the Scythe in a deck like this is it turns the little Scythe spells into a toolbox of minions. So of the minions that got consumed by the Scythe, you have access to them. So each one of the Scythe spells gives you access to any of the 3 things consumed by the Scythe one time. So instead of having to draw all 3 of them to have that option, you only have to draw 1 spell and you get all 3 options. It also has the upside of potentially protecting Il'gynoth from Dirty Rat Mutanus type stuff. So it's basically just draw, removal. You get the quest line mostly in here for the first couple stages to discount cards and make it easier to get your OTK off. I have Silvermoon Arcanist in here. It's so funny, this set actually had a slightly scuffed reprint of Talented Arcanist and a slightly scuffed reprint of Moarg Artificer. They're both more expensive than the original ones, and the only reason I ended up using this one is because it'll hit more than 1 spell. So we don't need to have too many doubling effects to get our OTK off, although it is kind of interesting to have so many copies of doubles. It may be enough to warrant a video later on once I've had a chance to actually experiment with these decks. But while Arcanist is cheaper, you can only use that on 1 spell, whereas this one, you could play this and do all of your spells for the bonus damage that turn. That, and I wanted to just have some more new cards in here, so trying it out. In general, I do think that Talented Arcanist and Moarg are probably still better than their newer versions. I don't know that this is going to make Lifesteal Demon Hunter real and wild yet, but it is a lot more to work with, so if this speaks to you, have fun. Next up, we have Linecracker. So this is largely the same deck. I didn't force too many new things in here. One of the new things is Crypt Keeper. So it's a 4/6 taunt that initially costs 8, and it gets discounted by 1 for each armor you have. And as you know, Druid is really good at accumulating armor. On the draw, just Ferocious Howling on curve means you have enough armor to play this thing. Crypt Keeper really good. It also has the benefit of being undead, which will come in clutch occasionally with the setup we have here. The reason that Linecracker is interesting this set is because Linecracker has become undead as well. So you do your normal Linecracker thing, get it huge, but it doesn't even need to be as big as you make it with the armor. It just has to be big enough to use Elder Nadox with. So you hit it with a bees, you will require Guff or Floop's Gloop to make these turns happen, but you hit it with a bees, and then it has 80 attack, and all you have to do is destroy it with Elder Nadox, and as long as you've had anything around the turn prior, it gets all of that extra attack to use right away, so you can just kill your opponent. The way I've built this is to have it as like a cheeky option in the otherwise normal version. I haven't built it to need to do this, so if the wrong things get ratted, if you can't ever get anything to stick, that's fine, you just play Linecracker as usual. You also don't need to necessarily kill the Linecracker off because the Crypt Keeper is itself undead. You could kill this off and just give your board of Spreading Plague minions a bunch of extra attack and finish your opponent off that way if the opportunity arises. So that is Elder Nadox, OTK Linecracker Druid. Next up, we have Questline Hunter. So Questline Hunter actually got some pretty insane support this expansion, I think. It got several new spells. It got the Ricochet Shot, so 1 mana deal 1. Already an amazing Questline Hunter spell, which is ridiculous because of how low impact that type of thing is outside of it. But it'll take every 1 mana damage dealing spell it can get. We got Arcane Quiver, so discover a spell from your deck. If it's arcane, give it spell damage +1. So it's like Thrive in the Shadows, but potential upside of making the arcane spells deal more damage, which is super relevant. So already with Ricochet Shot, you're dealing 2 damage to 3 enemies. Similarly, we have Haldren Brightwing. So Battlecry, give all arcane spells in your deck +1 spell damage. There is one of these for the hand, and I don't think that's as good as this is, because you do draw a lot with Questline Hunter, so you're going to have access to those, and your hand is often small early on. So I feel like the 2 mana one that only does this to your hand is not as good. But I do think that this one's worth it, especially because we got this insane card, Conjured Arrow. 2 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion, mana thirst 6, so if you have 6 mana crystals, draw that many cards. What? Turn 6 is the very earliest that your Tavish is active. So when you're trying to actually find enough cards to kill off your opponent, this will be drawing you cards. If you've drawn it off of Arcane Quiver or after you've used Brightwing, it's going to be drawing you more cards. I think it's insane. So at worst case, early on you're using it just to get your quest progress, and then once you've activated it, it's the best draw spell in your deck. I do have Eversong Portal in here. I don't know that it'll be any good, but it looks fun. I didn't realize this gives you more links for each spell damage. So if you get this off of the quiver or you play it after Haldren has been active, you get additional linkses, which is pretty good. I think even 1 more makes this pretty good. But I imagine after I've played with the deck for a little bit, either more spell damage goes in, unlikely, or this gets cut. But for now, I think it's pretty fun. So I wanted to try it. Next up, we have Quest Mage. So I did try to make a Mizaki Mage deck with the new Sorcerer's Apprentice that's only for arcane stuff. It felt bad, it wasn't fun, it didn't feel spicy to any degree, so never mind. Other than that, I think Mage got a pretty dry expansion, unfortunately. It did get something that I think is relevant, so I've opted to go with the barely new Quest Mage for this deck. Grandmaster Rameth. So 9 mana 5/7, recast each spell you've cast this game that didn't start in your deck. This is worse Parrot, obviously, because it's casting Time Warp again, but it does it on turn 9 instead of on turn 6. However, during your Parrot chain, you will get to 9 mana, and sometimes on 9 mana, you won't find the appropriate copy card, and you'll lose because you couldn't keep your chain going. So this does give you the additional chain card to find to get that added bonus of consistency. Another upside of this is he's also going to recast all of your coins and biscuits and things like that. So you play this and then you get to do a bunch of other stuff as well. And he has Savara synergy. So if you played Ice Blocks or you played Potion of Illusion with Savara, he's going to recast those things so you can turtle harder. Or if he's casting Potion of Illusion, he goes off infinitely. You don't need anything else. You just play him, you cast Time Warp, and then he adds himself back to your hand to be used again. So 90% sure that this makes Quest Mage a little bit better and will be core to the deck. 10% of me is like, 9 mana, maybe you don't run it after all, but this would be what I think Mage actually gained in Wild from this expansion. Next up, we have Aggro Paladin. I was really excited at Reborn coming back so that we could use the Oldhim quest for more Oldhim stuff, but it didn't actually get any good Reborns. So the neutral Reborns are just the Rager, which is the only one cheap enough to help advance the quest, but is also abysmal, and Invincible, which is a nice payoff for the quest, but if you don't have the quest completed already by that point, you probably lost. So Reborn is evergreen now. We should see that more often moving forward, and maybe Oldhim Quest Paladin will actually get some real support eventually. In the meantime, Paladin did get some really nifty stuff. So we have Blood Matriarch Liadrin. It's a 2 mana 3/2. After you summon a minion with less attack than this, give it Divine Shield and Rush, which is also nice from Call to Arms. If she's at the front of the Call to Arms, like with Knife Juggler, she will give the other minions behind her Divine Shield and Rush, which is nice for protecting Weblord or allowing you to trade off something on the board right away. Sanguine Soldier, 1 mana 2/1, Divine Shield, pretty good. Battlecry, deal 2 damage to your hero, not as good. This deck has wanted more 1-drops for a while, and it just hasn't found anything nice like Righteous Protector. What's cool about this is if you have it on 1, you have something to play, and that's pretty decent on 1. And if you get it off of Call to Arms, the Battlecry doesn't trigger, so it's kind of like a slightly worse mini-bot off of Call to Arms, but better than mini-bot initially because you pay half the mana for it. Then we have for Quel'Thalas, so give a friendly minion +3 attack, give your hero +2 attack this turn, so it's basically 2 mana for 5 damage, which is pretty good. And Seal of Blood, so 3 mana, give a minion +3/+3, and Divine Shield, deal 3 damage to your hero, both holy spells, which matters for Guardian's Grace. We've had a card like this before that doesn't deal the damage to your hero and has no health bonus, so it just gives the attack. This is going to make a minion so resilient, and the minion that we want to make resilient is Crab Rider. So once you stick a Crab Rider, you just put a bunch of stuff on it and try to explode your opponent. Normal Aggro Paladin stuff. New tools for a already well-known strategy. Then we have Reno Priest. So Priest is another one that I didn't love the cards that it got, so I didn't use a lot of them. One of the ones that I put in here is Crystalsmith Cultist. So 1 mana 1/2 Battlecry. If you're holding a shadow spell, get +1/+1. At first glance, this screams aggro Shadow Priest, and it might be good in that, but you're never going to keep a shadow spell in that deck, right? And you don't actually have that many of them. So this card on 1 actually isn't good a lot of the time. If it were a pirate, I think it would be an auto include, but obviously it's not. However, Reno Shadow Priest runs a ton of shadow spells and will very likely have one in the mulligan. And playing this on 1 gives you a nice body to kind of keep your opponent off you or start putting on the pressure if it's in one of the matchups where tempo matters, which you would be surprised for Reno Priest how relevant that is. Is this going to be core to the deck? I don't know, but it's a 1 mana 2/3, so I wanted to try it somewhere. The real exciting card for this deck is Sister Svalna. 6 mana 6/6, permanently add a Vision of Darkness to your hand. So the Vision of Darkness is a 3 mana shadow spell that discovers a shadow spell, but you can do this infinitely. The card is always in your hand. The strategy of Reno Shadow Thief Priest is to grind out your opponent with endless value, and this is actual endless value. So you will never run out of cards to ping with your Shadow Reaper Anduin once you've played this card. I think that's going to be most relevant in things like the Mirror, the ones that really grind. So in some ways you could consider this a tech card, but it is really cool and brand new, and the one thing in Priest that I'm actually really excited to try. Next up we have Kingsbane. So Rogue got the concoctions this expansion, which maybe you're really excited to try out, but it's a very parasitic mechanic and not a lot you'd else want to put in there to support it from Wild, so it's really going to feel like a standard deck. So if you want to play with concoctions, I think you go to standard for it. What Wild got was Shadow of Demise. So it's a free spell. It's basically the Valera the Hollow hero power in a spell, which is actually really good. So you can recast things like Deadly Poison or Tinker's Sharp Sword Oil or Secret Passage, because it'll stay a Secret Passage as you come back. The other new card in here is Ghostly Strike, so 1 mana deal 1, combo draw a card. I have that and Gone Fishing in here in an attempt to just kind of cycle really fast and really consistently find the Kingsbane. How good is this going to be? I would guess not very, but I love Kingsbane, and I would otherwise be pointing you to like Pillager or something. So this type of rogue deck appeals to me a little bit more than that, so that's what I put together. If you've been itching to play some Kingsbane, you have a little bit more support for it now. Next up we have N'Zoth Shudder Shaman. So Shaman is another one that didn't get anything mechanically that excites me too much, but it did get some cool effects. So Overlord Drakuru is a character I really liked back when I played WoW, and he says all the fun voice lines. He had a pretty epic double quest line. So he's mostly in here because I like him and I'm excited to play with him, but I don't know how much actual synergy he has with the rest of this. The basis of this deck is Blightblood Berserker. So 8 mana 3/8 undead, taunt, lifesteal, reborn, Death Rattle. Much like Kartut Defender, which is multiple Death Rattles on one card thanks to Reborn, playing this once puts a ton of Death Rattles in your N'Zoth pool. So you can play one of those and then play N'Zoth, and already your board is huge. Then later on you can play Shudderwock and do it again. The rest of this is like normal Shudderwock stuff. I did not put an infinite package in here. That's a different deck. The Murlocs are in here for tempo to get you to the late stages of the game when you can get your big boards. I have Rockgill in here, and I'm pretty sure this card is nuts, but I don't know if it's in this deck or at all. But considering how many Murlocs you can play with the Murloc package built this way all in one turn, I feel like this card has to be pretty good if your opponent can't clear them all at once. So yeah, this is basically an amalgam of cards to try out, if nothing else. We also have Astalor Bloodsworn, who is a fun card that will probably find its way into a deck somewhere. I don't know if it's actual Shudderwock Shaman, but maybe. And now we have the Boogeyman. This is Discard Warlock. This is the type of deck that I'm actually kind of worried about. This is the potential expansion ruiner. There's so much like burst damage you get off of having the Soul Barrage and the Fist of Jaraxxus alongside Tome Tampering, Cataclysm, and Expired Merchant. I've seen it in action already, and I would call it worrisome. With the Cataclysm especially, like you can't even board pressure it down. Nothing your opponent does early on matters. Once you get your discard flow going, you're just gonna explode all over the opponent. There's not a whole lot they can do about it. I'm not gonna doomer about it yet until like it goes live and we get to really experience it, but I think that this is a really efficient, scary deck. If you're looking for a cheap, fast deck, this is it. Next up, we have Galakrond Menagerie Warrior. So Warrior didn't really get a set this time, which is unfortunate because it hasn't gotten a set in a while for Wild. So that's pretty disappointing, but it did get something that I've been wanting for a long time, specifically for Warrior, which is a cheap, aggressive dragon to go along with Alexstrasza's Champion. Alexstrasza's Champion is an insane card. It's just all the dragons are so expensive and don't really fit a proactive strategy. There aren't any really to power it. I don't think that this is enough to make a dragon warrior like super powerful, but we got another thing, which is all the dual types. So you look at Mermy here is undead and Murloc. So you kind of get to run a bunch of mini amalgams, and the more effects like that you print, the easier it is to cast Tent Trasher early for nothing. On top of that, Patches is a demon and a pirate. So playing your first pirate will grant you 2 ticks off of your Tent Trasher. So this is an amalgam of a bunch of cute ideas that I've wanted to do in Warrior. I don't know that this is any good, but since it didn't get a good set, I just built something that I thought was especially cute. I will try this at some point, and getting to do all the fun things will be fun, but after a few losses, I imagine I won't come back to it until we get some more support again. But so that about wraps things up. Maybe you found something that you'd like to try on day one. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment for more Martian videos. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching.